Kevin Bowen here. Don't forget to listen to The Fan now on 93.5 or 107.5 FM, and check out our latest coverage online at 1075thefan.com.
And welcome back to another edition of Kevin's Corner. Happy New Year to everyone out there. Not sure how long you can still say Happy New Year, but whatever. It's only January 3rd, so I don't have anything else creative to lead into the podcast. Chris Presley, how was Christmas, New Year's? I guess we haven't done the podcast in 2 weeks, so you and I haven't seen each other in a while, but good to see you again, man.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Christmas was good. It's always good to see the family. Good to get away from work a little bit. New Year's just kind of took it slow this year. The older you get, I feel like the slower you kind of take it.
Enough.
Yeah, which is totally fine by me. Went down to Nashville to see my Vols lose to Purdue, but it was an exciting game.
Wow, what a game!
So yeah, that was my holiday season in a nutshell. Aside from a little bit of work, work never stops, obviously, and then you had some fun as well.
Yeah, I went down to Florida with my in-laws. We do it every year. Shout out to, by the way, listener Connor from Ireland, Chris. So we're at, you ever been to the Marco Island area?
I have.
Okay.
It's been a while.
I don't know why it's so popular for people from the Midwest, but I feel like you run into people. So we're at a bar called the Salty Dog on, I believe it was a Wednesday night. I'm sitting there at the bar and talking to my brothers-in-law, and next thing you know, this guy with a thick Irish accent comes up, and I won't pretend to do an Irish accent, but it's like, no pod this week? And I'm like, whoa. I'm like,
really?
Jeez. I'm like, gosh, is that my boss undercover? I'm like, what is going on here? And Connor was obviously joking, but he came up and introduced himself, and I love chit-chatting with him. I think I have this right. He married a woman who went to the University of Michigan, so sorry about their dealings on New Year's Eve and whatnot. But they come to the Marco Island area every couple of years for Christmas, and so he explained his Colts fandom to me, which I'm always, whenever I see someone, I met someone outside the Colts game yesterday from New Mexico, and I'm always curious how, out-of-town people become Colts fans, Obviously, this one being halfway across the globe, and he said that he was fascinated by how the NFL draft worked. And in 2012... with the Colts having the number 1 overall pick, that's when he became a Colts fan, which, you think about it, I don't know a ton about soccer, but predominantly that sport. There isn't a draft necessarily of college football, and here you go, booming in the NFL. So, yeah, he became a Colts fan then, and we talked about hurling, the fastest sport on grass as well. So, shout out to Connor, and I appreciate him listening to the podcast, and always enjoy when people come up and say hi, and always makes my day. So thank you to everyone who's listened throughout the past year and for the years now as this podcast continues to keep going. And sorry about no pod last week. We did do the Kevin and Corey morning show a couple of days, so try to point people in that direction. But now that we're into the new year, we'll continue with Kevin's Corner on a weekly basis, however long the season goes, and definitely into the offseason as well.
Yeah, and quick shout-out on my end to Tanner. Tanner's a listener. He was at the Vols game.
Tanner's a big Vols fan.
Yeah, wanted to meet up with me. Not great signal down there in Nashville, especially when you have basically a home game for the Volunteers. So sorry about that, Tanner, but was hoping, the Pacers have been struggling here. The Vols lose. I'm like, all right, Colts.
Notre Dame. Jeez.
They look good for a half.
Yeah, you don't need to try and scratch my back, Chris. That was brutal.
But I was just hoping that the weekend would end. The last home game of the year, T.Y. Hilton's last game. We'll see. In terms of Lucas Oil Stadium, wanted to win against the Raiders. Tough loss.
Yeah. Yeah, just a missed opportunity. You're at home. You're a touchdown favorite. You've done so much late in the year to put yourself into that sort of position. You want to take advantage. And, Chris, this is going to sound harsh, but there's a compliment on the end of this. But that was the worst game the Colts have played in months. I'd argue since week 3, Nashville. Now, again, that sounds harsh, but it's also a compliment. They've played very good football, for multiple months. We're not like, all of a sudden I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, the Colts are down 10-0? When does that happen? I'm not used to that. We're not used to the Colts getting punched in the mouth early, and I think that is kind of what frustrates people so much. I thought at times you were the less disciplined team. Special teams wasn't. Why is Rigoberto Sanchez having to make 2 tackles in a game? Just like stuff that the Colts usually control, they didn't control. Obviously, we'll get into Carson Wentz. If we would have done a podcast after that Arizona game, Wentz with the play of the year to make the play to Desmond Patman, all that. Like, that is his best play of the year. But having said that, that third quarter against Arizona, granted, there were a lot of people missing around him, was very, very poor. So I just felt like, and I think we've mentioned this pretty often on the podcast, the passing offense has held this team back from being where they're at right now, which is 9-7 and needing a win in the final week of the season to get in the playoffs. It finally boiled over. It finally simmered to a level where it cost you a football game. You win the turnover battle 2-0 as a touchdown home favorite. You think that's a layup. Mm-hmm. That's a definite win as well. So not getting any points off those turnovers, I thought were a couple big plays. But man, God bless the AFC South, because here you are, and you've got the slump busters of slump busters waiting for you at 1:00 on Sunday afternoon. As of recording Monday late morning, the Colts are a 15-point favorite for Sunday in Jacksonville. That would be the biggest road favorite in the history of the franchise.
That's a steep number.
So theoretically, you've never had an easier road game in the history of the Indianapolis Colts. Jacksonville stinks. The Colts are going to roll. I'm not worried whatsoever about this game. So the Colts will be in the playoffs. But, I just think there's a little frustration, Chris, of, I didn't realize this at the time, but, like, the Colts finished under 500 at home this year.
Yeah.
They went 4-5. Now, I thought the home schedule was tougher.
Yeah.
You lost to Seattle, you lost to the Rams, you lost to the Bucs, you lost to the Titans, like Raiders. Like, none of those losses are like jarring losses, but like, you would like to be better than that. Obviously, it's another year without winning a division. Now 7 straight years without winning the AFC South. I think those are frustrating aspects to this season.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I also can sit here and realize that this team has played really good football for long stretches over the past couple of months. There are reasons to still think that they can win in the month of January. How long can they win? What's holding them back from getting on a run? Those are all things that we will get into and that we've addressed, I think, try to point out at different points in this season. But, yeah, just in general, frustrating. And I know we won't get into, like, that play specifically too much, but Derek Carr to Hunter Renfrow, that's pretty darn special. Pretty darn special.
The kid just makes plays.
That was something, man. Leonard's right there. You got to think to yourself, Leonard's probably thinking, my first sack of the year. Here we go. Pad the defensive player of the year resume, all that. And he jumps, and Carr pretty calm in that moment. And Renfrow with a hell of a catch. And we'll get into that matchup with Kenny Moore.
Yeah.
Certainly. But, disappointing, Chris, just because you want to do it in your own building. You want to, let's say Taylor got nicked up. Maybe you can rest him a little bit, in the final. You don't want to have to go down there and win the game. But that's where you're at. Obviously, there are some other scenarios that we'll put in an article up on 1075thefan.com. But, disappointing to lose your home finale.
All right, let's start with things you didn't like. As always, coming off a loss, we will start there and then go to things that you did like. First thing, obviously, Carson Wentz, looking at the stats, the way, the touch on the ball yesterday, just all around that and the passing offense, I think we're all in agreement.
Bad. Bad. Very bad. I want to make it very clear from the start, Carson Wentz is not playing with elite personnel at receiver and tight end. This is not just a Carson Wentz problem. At the same time, I look over at the other sideline on Sunday and think to myself, Derek Carr lost his play caller during the middle of the season, lost his number one wideout during the middle of the season, thinks he's getting one of the best tight ends in football back midweek. Then all of a sudden, that COVID situation goes against the Raiders. So Darren Waller's not back. And yet, the Raiders are able to produce through the air without, a Jonathan Taylor
at
the running back position. I think those are the frustrating elements to where you're at right now with this passing offense. If you look at Wentz's numbers, and I will continue to come back to the key metric that Frank Reich loves to use because it's not passing yards, it's not as much touchdowns, interceptions. The metric he really likes is yards per attempt and evaluating kind of where your passing offense is at. If you look over the past, let me just pull it up.
Okay.
7.5 yards per attempt is really kind of the key mark for Frank Reich in evaluating what is a solid passing offense. The Colts have been above that mark twice since week 6. Including yesterday, that's now 6 of lower than 6 yards per attempt in a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's an issue. I mean, that's Jacoby Brissett-like inefficiency in a passing offense. And again, Brissett didn't have the best running back in the NFL line up behind him, snap in and snap out. So I just think that is what is so frustrating to where you're at right now. I know a lot of people want to point blame to or make an excuse, I think, for Carson from Sunday in the lack of practice time he had last week. I think I personally, and I thought this before the Frank Reich press conference started, I'm like, that's kind of a cop-out. The Raiders had 2 walkthroughs last week, and they looked fine to me. Carson Wentz said in his own presser he was working out on Wednesday. It's not like he was bedridden throughout the whole week. And Frank Reich in his post-game press conference, Chris, it's about the closest you'll ever get Frank Reich to calling out a player or thinking it's a stupid question. Someone asked him about the lack of practice time for Wentz last week, and if that contributed to the performance on Sunday. I've got the right quote written down here, so I will read it. Frank goes, "Obviously, it's always great to get every rep you can, but at this time of the year, you lean on accumulated reps when you have to. It's not uncommon for players this time of year to miss a lot of practice time. It happens all over the league at all positions. For all of us, those players, whoever they are, have to find a way to come in and still play well."
It's a great point.
For Frank Reich, that is saying that had zero bearing on Carson Wentz's play. Carson Wentz did not play well. That's, again, it's me putting words into Frank Reich's mouth, but having sat through hundreds of Frank Reich press conferences over the years, I think I have a pretty good read on what that says. He said something similar about Jacoby Brissett. Remember Brissett battling that knee injury kind of late in the year?
Yes.
Quentin Nelson Cameron Hayward pushed Nelson into Brissett, and they talked about some of that, and that was more physical in terms of a specific injury. Same thing with Rivers last year and that toe injury when Rivers had to miss a little bit of practice as well. I'm not going there as an excuse. I think it's pretty lazy. Are you going to sit here and tell me a little bit more practice time would have helped Carson Wentz hit a wide open T.Y. Hilton when, everyone in that building, could have hit that? I just thought in general, from identifying blitzes, playing off that, the deep ball, I mean, boy, you talk about people go to Vegas and dream for luck like that on the deep ball that went to, 2 Raiders defenders, and who knows if Ashton Doolin got his hand in there or whatnot. I thought the third down play, Chris, was really struggling. And, you grade quarterbacks more on third down, red zone, fourth quarter. That's why the third down red zone play that Wentz made to Patman was so special. I mean, if he doesn't make that play, you very well lose that game.
Mm-hmm.
You settle for a field goal, still one possession game. Arizona drove the length of the field. They just decided to kick a field goal there late. You look at Carr in the fourth quarter yesterday. You look at Wentz in the third quarter, on third down. It's just in those moments, man, I just saw 2 totally different quarterbacks. So this inefficiency has continued to boil, has continued to simmer. It's been there. We've tried to make sure it wasn't swept under the rug. A lot of people wanted to sweep it under the rug. I've seen the YouTube comments. Why are you bringing up Wentz after a loss? Because this is festering. This is building. We are now seeing this as a trend of his ups and downs. I think you can make a strong argument more downs than ups. And I do put most of it on him. I can sit here and acknowledge that the wideout core and the tight end core needs to do their part, but Chris, not like we're sitting here and we saw 4 drops yesterday or, batted balls lead to interceptions off your own wideouts or things like that. So just really disappointed in this passing offense in that I'm not acting like this should be a top 5 passing offense or even a top 10. They've just been a below average group, and considering that you have the ultimate attention getter at running back, that's an issue for me. It's an issue for me, and no matter what happens on Sunday, unfortunately, you can win 60-0 on Sunday, it will be the hanging cloud over you getting into the postseason and just how far you can go from there.
And you mentioned earlier the second point we want to talk about, the start and the finish. You talked about getting punched in the mouth early, something we've not seen the Colts have happened to them in recent games, or if not all season.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it was just startling. So I just thought the start and the finish was so startling to me. I was like, wow, 10-0, boom. The Colts are having some penalties, and the Colts are losing the field position battle, and the special teams is going to the visiting team, and I don't know. I probably look at the Raiders, and it seems like yesterday, those are the only ways that the Raiders win games. Is they hang in there, and then they sneak it out at the end. Or they get blown the you-know-what out. That's kind of been their MO this season. And I just would have liked to have seen more of a sense of urgency from the Colts. And, getting so many guys back. I think the Colts were the healthier team as well, playing at home. Disappointed in that. I think pass rush and pass offense is still the one or the 2 areas where I'm just kind of all right, that's where I think this season will come to an end. But I also can acknowledge that, finishing games in the fourth quarter, that's kind of been something that, we saw it a little bit against the Cardinals, but it still has probably been something that we haven't seen as often as you would like this season. Granted, they've built leads early in games, so they've kind of avoided that, but I just thought in general, sense of urgency. The Raiders played like the more desperate team, and I guess technically they were. They need to win, out. The Colts weren't necessarily in that position, but I just expect more from a high-character football team, but a lot of self-motivated guys, and, again, the Colts are going to win on Sunday, but you just you never want to leave it to a 60-minute football game, and that's where you're at right now. So, I was disappointed in the start, in the finish. I was, I thought about throwing Kenny Moore in this what I didn't like category. The Hunter Renfrow-Kenny Moore matchup was clearly a matchup that both teams acknowledged during the week and were content with it. Hunter Renfrow's really good.
Yes.
I'm not breaking any news here. We all watched him play at Clemson. But he looked like the Pro Bowler, and Kenny Moore did not look like the Pro Bowler on Sunday. And to me, Moore always sets the tone early in a game. I feel like he always makes an opening play drive that just puts you in a comforting feeling if you're a Colts fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he got beat twice for critical plays on that opening drive, and I just thought to myself, man, this could be a little bit longer afternoon. Obviously, the play at the end, just unbelievable by Carr to keep it alive. I don't really fault Moore for that, but start and finish, man. Just very, very, very disappointing.
All right, let's jump over to things that you did like and take away from that game as we head into, hopefully, what will be a win against Jacksonville and then into the playoffs. The first one, Leonard's ball production.
Yeah, Darius Leonard, of course, what he was able to do in the interception, goes into the turnover category, but that forced fumble he had early in the game, Chris, stripped Marcus Mariota on the sideline, forced the 3rd and 1. They don't get a first down. Boom, false start. Now they're back to 3rd and 6. I think Kwity Paye maybe had a sack coming off that. And that was a huge play. And then the Leonard pick, of course, set you up in great field position, and you weren't able to cash in on it. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned Leonard here. Of course, you needed one more play from him. And I know that sack, he's going to be lamenting that for sure. But I just thought in general what Leonard's able to do from a turnover standpoint, it's been damn impressive all year long and should be a first-team All-Pro.
And this is not to take away from Darius whatsoever, and obviously he uses everything as motivation, so if he wants to use this, then so be it.
He uses everything, man.
I feel like I've never seen someone more run laterally after they intercept the ball than Darius.
Say that again?
I feel like he runs east and west instead of north and south and a lot of times it looks like he's trying to run over to a corner to pitch it because he knows, hey, you're faster than me.
Yeah, the ankle, it was interesting. I'm like, man, how much is he, again, how much is it there? But that interception, I thought he did a great job in just reading the eyes, of that and then making the play as well. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned Leonard and give him the credit that he deserved.
Absolutely.
I thought Buckner made a couple plays. I thought his rush was pretty solid. Quiddy got involved. I still would like to see it a little bit more dialed up. Maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit, but that's just me there. Back end, Rodgers had the pick. I thought there were a couple times where Rodgers did get beat pretty handily, though, with some other plays as well. Rock Yassin, made a couple nice plays. We'll see about Xavier Rhodes and his health. So, yeah.
All right, let's jump to Twitter questions. First one comes from Bailey. Says, no, this is probably going to be the talking point most of the day in terms of Carson Wentz. So what are your thoughts on Reich's personnel choice on the final drive? They feel like it would have been nice to have the MVP on the field to win the game.
Okay, so I felt like Taylor was on the field for a good amount on that final drive. I need to look that up. So Bailey's probably referencing that second and long run or screen to Hines, maybe there at the end. I'm not going to nitpick too much with the Taylor usage. At some point, Chris, your quarterback has got to win you the football game. And I got it right here. So you ran Taylor on first down. You got it to 2nd and 9. And then you went with the screen to Hines and dumped to Hines. If Taylor gets stuffed again and the Raiders sell out on the run, now you're looking at another 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 with Wentz, and those have been disastrous all day long. Yeah. So now you're looking at an even longer field goal for Badgley. Granted, he did end up making a longer field goal, but I'm just trying to put myself in a little bit of, Frank Reich's shoes here of you want to pound Taylor, you should pound him, but there also comes a point in time, Chris, where you got to have your quarterback make. I feel like Derek Carr finds simple so much better than Carson Wentz finds simple. And I know it's very easy to watch one game and just kind of take that away, but it just seems like with Wentz, he struggles to make kind of the easy play. Keep a drive alive. Move the chains a little bit. Take your 5-7 yard completion and hope a guy can make something after the catch. Put the ball placement on the right shoulder. Let that guy run after the catch, things like that there. So I don't, Bailey, if I'm not going to nitpick to the point where the Jonathan Taylor usage on the final drive. I thought he was out there a good amount. Maybe one of those runs there on 2nd down, but again, your passing offense has got to be able to get you in a spot to where it is not pounded with Taylor for 40 times a game.
Cameron wants to know what was more damaging, Carson Wentz overthrowing a wide-open T.Y. Hilton in crunch time or Kenny Moore getting abused all day by Hunter Renfrow?
Boy, that's a good one, man. I mean, honestly, if I don't know if our listeners know this, but if Kenny Moore's performance on Sunday and Carson Wentz's performance had a kid, that would have been me in that shrimp eating contest.
Yeah, congrats to you on completing that. If you guys don't know, Kevin was in the St. Elmo shrimp eating contest yesterday.
Well, thank you for saying completing it. Did not win. No. Hate spicy. Hate shrimp. Tried shrimp for the first time in my life 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and don't know if I'll be dabbling back into it anytime soon. I try to shovel about 4 in my mouth right away.
Yeah, I feel like you got to go quick, though, because once that heat hits you. Whew.
Dude, next thing you know, the heat, but it just stings you. That's the thing. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
Boy, there was a moment about 15 seconds in where I'm like, dude, I'm about ready to hurl. Luckily, I bought some milk at a gas station on my drive down there. Someone told me you got to drink milk.
Smart.
So I chugged the milk and made sure to keep it down. Can you imagine if I would have puked in front of 200 people there in that tent or whatever?
How many did you get down?
Well, so Mark, I thought I got down 5, maybe 6. They said I lost by 1, and Mark claimed he did 8. Now, we had Jeff Saturday on the morning show today. And Jeff Saturday said there's no way he could do more than about 8 in a minute. And he said that I was Tart Glenn-like. He said Tart Glenn was not a great eater.
Really?
And I'm like, wow. The fact that I'm getting compared to Tarek Glenn right now in the eating department, you talk about things to add to your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's big time there. So that made me feel a little bit better. More damaging, it's got to be the Wentz overthrow. I know a lot of people are like, Hilton would have scored there. He wouldn't have scored there, but that would have been a 30-yard play, something like that. It would have been a big play there. Kenny Moore, I just have such high expectations for him, Chris. I get it. Renfro's a terrific route runner. He's quick, he's fast, he's shifty, he's all those things. Him and Carr are clearly on the same page.
Yeah.
It's, poetry watching those two work. But I trust Kenny Moore more than maybe any football player on this team. And so for him to have gotten beaten 5-ish times, in those situations, I think that is what is frustrating.
Next one comes from Big Bama. Wants to know, do you think that Carson Wentz and Phillip Rivers, having different skill sets, you would like to see Coach Reich do a little bit more in terms of getting the ball out of Carson's hands quicker like he did last year with Rivers? Or do you think Carson just has to do a better job reading the defense post-snap?
Yeah, I think it's post and pre. Something we talked about, we broke down at the start of the year, kind of strengths and weaknesses of Wentz compared to Rivers. And the biggest weakness I think I put down was timing, rhythm, ball placement. Those aspects you take for granted when you watch quarterbacks play the game of football. It's the flash that we see. That's what we see. Those are the highlight plays. Those catch our eye the most. But it's the ability to, all right, they're bringing this nickel blitz. That means I need to slide Hines here. That's going to create, Mo Alley as the hot read, whatever. I don't think Carson does a good enough job in that area. And then when it comes down to it, that's when the ball placement on the underneath stuff and the crossers, and that really showed up a lot last year in Philly. A lot of Philly people are like, this was a big problem for him last season. So, Wentz has a higher ceiling. He does versus Rivers. But in terms of what was Rivers' greatest strength, it was that. And I think that gets back to the quick rhythm stuff that you just don't see.
Colts Maniac wants to wish you a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
To him, accuracy isn't Carson Wentz's biggest concern.
Are you a fan of New Year's weddings?
I actually am.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because, especially when I was younger, and I say younger, hell, I'm 31. You didn't have to make plans and figure out what bar are we going to, what overpriced drinks are we going to get. It's like, let's go celebrate. All my friends are going to be there. We're going to get food. We're going to have more than likely an open bar. So you don't really have to it's already made for you.
Yeah. I would agree wholeheartedly with that. So yes, I'm a fan of it as well.
Colts Maniac's question, though, is not the poor decision making. It was our last drive. He believes Carson Wentz, trying to play hero ball, could have run for some yards, and he missed a throw, both of which were 0 positive yards. Feels like we should beat the Jags next week, but do you think we can even get past the first round? And do you think the week without practice would have made a difference?
Yeah, I referenced the practice earlier. I did think there were a couple times, Chris, that Wentz didn't run. Some of the Houdini escapes are just wild. I mean, they're just, it's like, did he disappear? Did he shrink? Like, how did he do that? But then he got out there, and I'm like, dude, just run. Like, hell, maybe he's so tired from escaping all that chaos that, he just makes a poor throw there. Do I think the Colts can get past the first round? If you're going to ask me that on January 3rd, no. Do I need to see matchups? Do I need to see the wild card round play out? All of that? Yeah, but again, I think you guys know this from listening. My biggest concern all year, concerns, plural, has been the pass rush and the quarterback play. And I am of the belief that if you're going to win multiple games in the postseason, particularly multiple games on the road, you've got to have a high level of quarterback play. I know so often people want to reference the Joe Flacco Ravens Super Bowl. Go back and look at what Flacco did in those playoff games.
Yeah.
He was incredible in those playoff games. It was absurd, the numbers that he put up in the Ravens getting on that run there. It was not, whatever. I don't even know who the running back was. Ray Rice then? Ray Rice.
Yeah.
And that defense. Like, it wasn't just them. So.
And you mentioned those numbers on I think the last podcast.
Did I? Okay. Yeah. I mean, they were just absurd. So that is what is concerning to me of we just haven't seen Wentz in this environment. Now, that first round matchup's the Bengals. I feel like a lot of people want to play the Bengals just because they're the Bengals. I'm like, this is not your older brother's Bengals. I mean, I think they've got the best, most diverse skill group in the NFL.
I saw someone comparing them, and this is obviously when you get into comparisons, and it's way early, said that they remind them of Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, and Edgerrin James.
It might sound asinine to some people, but I sit here and kind of nod my head. Like, there is some of that feel to it now. An absurdly long way to go until they fall into that category. But I like the tight end. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Uzma, whatever.
Yeah, I can't either.
I mean, Joe Mixon's a great back, and I mean, they go deep into that wideout. T. Higgins was almost a Colt. I think if Pittman would have been gone, they would have taken Higgins. So had he been there as well. So yeah, I think that I don't know. How does Joe Burrow look in an NFL playoff game? Who knows all those things? But yeah, right now, depending on matchup, I'm probably in the definitely could win a game. I wrote something last week about they have a blueprint to get it done in January, but I think to get it done and push forward, you're going to need more from the air attack or pray for bad weather.
You mentioned running into a listener from Ireland. Now we will talk about a question from a listener from Germany who appreciates all that you do because it keeps him up to date on the Colts. This one's from Justice. Hi, Kevin. What a brutal loss to the Raiders. Can you try and explain to me why the Colts took the timeouts to avoid the 10-second runoff after the review? From how I see it, the Colts would have had at least 20 to 30 seconds to answer if they had just accepted the runoff.
Well, Justice, I believe you it sounds like an NFL game coming to Germany, right?
Is that so?
I think so on that. I got a couple questions on this, and I'm a little confused by it. So, if I'm not mistaken, the play happened, and Renfro scored with, well, I guess I can just look it up here on the old game book. So he scores with, was it 42 seconds?
I think. 49,
so they
42,
went back and put 54 seconds on the clock.
Okay.
Because obviously he got up and ran. It looks like they went back and put up 48 seconds on the clock. So at that point, when Renfro goes down, the clock is still running. So you've got to take one timeout there to stop the initial first down. So there's your one timeout off the board. No 10-second runoff. There's no, it's not like there was a Colt penalty or I thought 10-second runoff was only for an offensive penalty there. So there's your first timeout. Jacobs runs for 2 yards. You take your second timeout with 44 seconds to go. Jacobs runs for 5 yards. You take your final timeout with 39 seconds to go. Jacobs then runs for 2 yards on third down. They milk the clock down to 2 seconds. So yeah, I had no clock management question or anything about that. So
I was confused about it too, just from what the announcers were saying, and it was all such a confusing time if you were watching from home.
Were they screwing some things up?
They were mentioning a 10-second runoff in the booth, so
yeah, I thought it was. I mean, once Renfro is deemed down after the first down, that starts the clock again. Once you get the chain set, therefore, the Colts. That's why you wanted Renfro to score,
right?
I mean, you wanted him to score a touchdown there and pray that you get 4 defensive pass interference penalties and you catch a touchdown.
Let's go to a question from Robbie. It says he feels like Carson Wentz as a lock starter for next season is a coin flip. He's flashed some pretty good stuff, but he also has been pretty bad and pretty mind-numbing bad at that. Assuming we make the postseason, what needs to happen to erase any question marks around him going into next year?
Yeah, Robbie, I think Matt asked something similar just about he was frustrated by Frank's lack of accountability. Again, in terms of Carson, if you read it in between the lines with Frank, that's as harsh as he's going to be with his comments after the game. Carson Wentz is your starter in 2022. I'd be shocked if he wasn't. The thing that he continues to do really well, Chris, is protect the football. I'm sure he got away with one in the end zone, the ball to Hilton. Or who knows who it was to, but it ended up in Hilton's hands. What does he need to do to erase any question marks? Boy, get on a big run and put a lot on his plate and handle that on his plate. I mean, it's a high standard. And it all comes back to the root of the question, Chris, of what do you want in your quarterback? What do you feel like you need in your quarterback? There's a lot of reasons to like this Colts football team. I wrote that story last week about the blueprint the Colts have, from discipline to sound and special teams, a star at running back, a defense that I think for the most part has played decent this year. At times, taking the ball over at an insane level as well. But do you feel like you need more? Do you feel like you need a high-level play at quarterback? And if you sit there in that room, and I'm talking a Ballard, Reich, whoever in the room, then if that question is, we need more, all right, you're either going to have to go out and find wideouts and tight ends to support him better and give him the opportunity to tap into that, to play off of Jonathan Taylor and his incredible production. Or, and again, I don't think it's going to come to this, or you need to, go in a different direction at quarterback, which obviously they're not going to do. They have too much invested at quarterback. But that's the age-old debate of when the Colts went out and got Wentz, the question so often was, who else were you going to get? That's what I constantly heard. And to me, that's such a lazy question to ask. Yes, who else were you going to get? Sure, Carson Wentz in terms of the best available. I don't know, outside of Stafford. And there was one in particular, very important decision maker in the Colts building that didn't want Stafford, that Wentz was the guy. But again, if that question is, are we in an opportunity right now to try and find a franchise quarterback that can push the ceiling of this football team at a very high level? There might be growing pains, and you might have to give up a good amount. But again, we feel like we can get to that level. That is the question that needs to be asked, not the who else. Who else? What else are we going to get? He's the best that we could have done. I just think that's a bit lazy. If you really wanted to mortgage things, you could have gotten into the Stafford sweepstakes. If you want to be a little bit more patient but trust in developing, you could have traded up in the draft. So I think Carson Wentz has been okay this season. At times, I think his ability to protect the football has put him in the better than average category. But the level of play we've seen from him this season, to me, is not at the level you need to go deep in the playoffs and do it on an annual basis.
Got a two-parter from Brian. The first one, he says, if you don't know, that's totally fine. And that question would be, why did the Colts go away from the huge full-field American flag to start the game?
I mean, it looks pretty big to me. Did it used to be the full field?
I think it used to. I don't remember. I never went to every game, though, and sometimes they don't show you the national anthem.
Right.
So
I mean, I've been to every game. Well, yeah, I think I've missed one home game in the last 11 or 12 years. I feel like it's big, and I mean,
yesterday's was.
I know it's not. It doesn't take up the whole corner of the 50, whatever it is, 53 by 100 field. I don't know. Is that like a timing thing? Like, it takes you, an extra minute to crumble it up isn't the right word, but I don't know, fold it back together and then get all those people off. Like, I've talked to people that have held the flag. Like, there's some pretty strict, like, you do this, you do that, because, I mean, timing is everything. The NFL wants all those games to kick off at the same time. They want the John Madden tributes to play at the same time around the league, like, all those things. So, but yeah.
I think it might be timing might be right.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the Colts have one of the bigger flags in the league, if we're going to argue that. Sorry, what was the second one?
Second one is, if Phillip Rivers was our quarterback, would the Colts be better, worse, or about the same?
They'd probably be a little better record-wise, maybe a win or two. But at the same time, Chris, Wentz gives you the higher ceiling. Rivers is not making that play in Arizona. And to me, you need someone that has the ability to make those plays to try and do something extraordinary. But yeah, I mean, I think you'd be a better football team in terms of record with Phillip Rivers. Especially with, again, Taylor's giving you even more than Rivers got last year from him as well.
This one comes from Jake. What does it say about Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, and Carson Wentz that the Philadelphia Eagles have already clinched a playoff spot with a much worse roster, and the Colts are in a position to potentially miss it?
I think it says nothing. I don't. I mean, it's the NFC. I don't like. I was as shocked as probably anyone when all of a sudden someone told me yesterday, yeah, the Eagles just clinched a playoff berth. I'm like, wow.
And then their fans almost killed their quarterback.
Well, yeah, that's the that's the state of the NFC right now. Like, that's what gets in the playoffs. So good on Nick Sirianni. I mean, I had questions about him as a head coach, and that's a really strong first season. But I just feel like those final few spots in the NFC, it's like some teams have got to get in. I mean, hell, Arizona clinched a spot with 3 weeks to go after a loss. You know, like that. So, yeah, I don't know, Jake. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we're reading a lot into it. If what happens to the NFC, they're in a very easy division, the NFC East, and in general, the NFC has just had a pretty top-heavy year with 4 or 5 teams running away from everybody else, and then, the first one to 500 wins. So I think the AFC is a better conference in terms of depth. Not top line, but I think depth-wise, I think the AFC is the better conference.
This next one comes from Mac. First off, he wants to wish you and your family a happy new year and hopes everything is going well.
Appreciate that, Mac. Same to you and all of our listeners and their families out there.
He doesn't try to ride the highs and lows too much in talking about Carson Wentz. He's not necessarily sold on Carson Wentz, but he doesn't feel like he's the worst option out there. It seems like Carson Wentz doesn't believe in himself the way that Frank Reich does. What are your thoughts there? And then to follow up, what's your confidence that we'll beat the Jaguars for the first time in Jacksonville since 2014 to secure a playoff spot?
Yeah, Mac, I'll change every diaper Rosie has the next year if the Colts lose. I mean, Jacksonville stinks. They are god-awful. I get that people are, we haven't won there since 2014. Like, history, it's a nice thing to note. No bearing on this I mean, hell, the last game in Jacksonville was what? 30-some games ago? It was the season opener last year. You know how different both of these football teams are? So, as far as Wentz, what's he say? I'm not sold on Wentz, but it just seems like he doesn't believe in himself the way Frank does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair to maybe have some questions about Wentz a little bit mentally. Chris, I think there's a big question out of Philly, just like fundamentally, where he was at. So I think that's something to kind of worry a little bit about, of just when those things break down, does that hurt his confidence? I thought the Arizona game, and Jeff Saturday referenced this when we had him on the show, I thought at times you saw him not trust what was in front of him, O-line-wise, which is understandable. I mean, there's so many backups in that game. But I think that impacts fundamentally where he's at. And I mean, Frank is always going to have an insane amount of belief. I always find it fascinating. Frank wants to keep aggressive. He loves to be aggressive late in the game, even when he's up. He's a big believer in throwing the football late. It's interesting to watch him in those situations this year and see how he calls plays with Carson. Or does he continue to follow that? We had a question on the morning show today of, is Frank blinded by Carson a bit? You guys have heard me say I think that Carson's the son Frank never had, and I know that sounds like a creepy comment, but I do believe it. I just think Frank has an insane amount of conviction and belief in all of his players, which is great. I think 95% of the time, it gets a little dicey when you do make hard decisions. But yeah, that's a good question.
Josh is wondering, what's the difference between Carson Wentz's amazing off-balance / off-platform throws and his terrible ones? Is it really as simple as sometimes he makes them and sometimes he doesn't?
Yeah, Josh, I think it's like, look at that Patman play. The Patman play is off script. He's not thinking. You're free. He's just being an athlete, and he's got incredible athletic ability. I mean, I remember on those early podcasts during training camp, Chris, I was just like, guys, I don't know if this sounds accurate, but I'm trying to paint a picture for you. This dude can whip that ball around the field. Like, he is just a fluid throw over the football. He's got the different arm angles, and all of that is just so God-given. But I think there are times, too, when you get in the huddle, Chris, and you know that your first read is like, all right, Michael Pittman on this crosser, or Michael Pittman on this slant, and you start thinking about it, it's what you drill, it's what you practice, and you become a little bit too mechanical. And then all of a sudden, that interior rush bumps you a little bit off your spot, and now your footwork breaks down. I wouldn't mind seeing him get on the Colts kind of get him outside of the pocket a little bit more, and just kind of using him as, I think he's a decent thrower on the run.
Mm-hmm.
And then he can also obviously use his legs in those moments. Like we saw it yesterday even. When he kept it a few times on his RPOs, the Raiders weren't really accounting for him in those moments. So I think got something to kind of grade him on. But yeah, I think it comes back to a little bit of mental. Just like when you're thinking, okay, 3-step, 5-step, I've repped this so often. Here it is. Like I know full well where I'm going with it. And like you just try to guide it, like picturing a dartboard at a church festival.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you're just guiding it up there to win, whatever prize where, the drunk dad, the coach in CYO comes over and, he's just winging it and he drills that bullseye and, wants to tell you stories.
Still got
about, it. Yeah, exactly. His 6.4 points he averaged coming off the bench for a JV team.
5 more to go. This one's from Jason. He, like all of us, is eating up everything shown in Hard Knocks, especially the coaching situations. Is anything that we're seeing something that's special, or is all this pretty much commonplace in the NFL?
I mean, I do think the Colts are an extremely close football team that have a ton of self-motivated players, and the high character thing is no bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, I am a firm believer in that, and honestly, it's a Chris Ballard aspect of roster building that I kind of just was like, oh, that's nice that he says that. A lot of people say it. They act on it, and I think we're all seeing that. As far as the coaching stuff or like I think all of it's pretty natural. The Brian Bakers Brian Baker's a goofy dude. He's a nuts, hilarious guy. The few times I've been able to talk in him or talk with him. But like those cameras, if I'm not mistaken, Chris, all the meeting room cameras, they're all just kind of fixed up into a corner.
Yeah.
And, you've got a little joystick and you can figure it out afterwards. It's not like there's Chris Presley, the cameraman, who's in charge of the running backs room today, and he's walking around like, the principal would come in and evaluate your teacher back in the day. Like, I don't think it's that at all. So, yeah, I love Hard Knocks, man. I think it's been awesome. I think it's just going to be, I think it's awesome for fans, and I think I'm also curious to see just kind of what other players think about the Colts around the league. Does that all of a sudden pique interest for, players, possibly wanting to team up or, join. I know we don't necessarily hear that as much, but in free agency, can that be another weapon for the Colts?
Right. This one comes from Garrett. In your opinion, what might separate Jonathan Taylor from other elite running backs who quickly fell off the elite status? He mentions Gurley, Eddie Lacy, Ezekiel Elliott even, and says even good running backs just seem to become irrelevant within 2 years in the NFL.
Garrett, it's a totally fair question. Obviously, you think about a second contract coming up, Chris, with him. With those names in general, I would just say that Taylor has the speed element that certainly Eddie Lacy. Don't think Todd Gurley ever had that full gear. Even Zeke, I would like to. Taylor's more in the 4.3 can. Like when Taylor had that 18-yard run yesterday, the dude was just shot out of a cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Just like then the next run, he had the lateral movement where he kind of jump cut to his left.
Yeah.
Then obviously you saw the play to end the first half. Like that was speed, lateral, power in one quarter of football, and just I just think that's right. I think what really separates him though, I do think he's wired very differently. Like I've never heard a human being say the word prehab more in my life than Taylor. I've told the story before about how they get back from a Wisconsin road game and, he's not thinking about, do we have enough Natty Light in the fridge and, make sure that Betty Sue doesn't show up to this party, but if she's at that party, I'll be happy, whatever that. This dude's going in the ice bath and he's just a uniquely wired individual. And again, Gurley, Lacy, Zeke, I'm not going to pretend to know how they are, but I just think all of that, you put all of that together, I think Colts fans should be optimistic Taylor can continue this deeper into his 20s than most. Granted, it's a position that Father Time has just absolutely dominated, so that would worry you.
CMC emphatically wants to know, where is Dio Odangbo? He doesn't know if he's hurt or what, but I feel like I have not seen him in a few weeks.
He's playing 54 out there. Made a play yesterday. I'm trying to think of when it was, but yeah, I mean, he was. I think they take Grover Stewart off the field, bring Dio in for some nickel snaps, and yeah, I mean, he plays. I know the production hasn't been there, but I'm not shocked by it again. I mean, this is a guy that's coming off a torn Achilles or whatever, but no, he's definitely out there.
Country Boy Eddie, the name of this listener, do you think there's any chance that T.Y. Hilton gets one more year? Still seems to be our second best and reliable receiver. Would love to see him seek one final hurrah. And also, do NFL players ever get the ceremonial type final year similar to what the NBA and MLB players have gotten recently?
Boy, that's a great second part. I don't recall many NFL players getting a ceremonial treatment, Chris. Do you?
I don't.
You know, one of my favorite sports memories growing up, and at the time I didn't really get it, but now as the years have gone on and I'm such a loser and I dial up old YouTube videos. Do you remember Reggie Miller's last game here, Pistons playoffs?
Yes.
Pretty competitive series. I want to say the Pacers lost like 4-2 or something like that. Home game here over at, I don't know, Conseco. I guess maybe it was Banker's Life at that point. Well,
I think it was Conseco
yeah,
still.
it was probably still Conseco. Same building, I should say,
yes.
Different name. And I don't know if Carlisle was your coach, I guess. Carlisle takes Reggie out, and there's like 15 seconds to go, and they're down 8. So this is it. You're taking them out for one foul time. Crowd gives them standing ovation, and I thought this was one of the coolest moments. Larry Brown, the Pistons head coach, he then takes another timeout, and he gets his whole team to walk out on the floor and clap and continue the standing ovation for Reggie. And I got some hair on the back of my neck stand up right now telling that story, and it's a great YouTube clip. It's a blurry clip, but Reggie emotional on the bench, and, Carmel and Center Grove moms crying everywhere in the stands and all that. And, like, it's just, like, that stuff about sports you absolutely love. NFL, you just... Yeah, I know there's people mad that Washington didn't put up a tribute video for Ryan Kerrigan yesterday. Kerrigan came back and, Eagles Washington game there. So, yeah, I don't think so. It's just hard to do in the NFL when, like, every game matters too so much. I know that might seem a little bit too cutthroat, but, yeah, I'm guessing here. I think yesterday was it for Hilton. I mean, there's multiple layers to it. 1, he could retire. 2, he could go somewhere else in free agency. Or 3, the Colts could say, we don't want you back.
Yeah.
I mean, the Colts said that to him at times this offseason, very close to going to Baltimore. So, when they announce the offense, is Hilton usually the last guy announced? I thought it was Taylor a few weeks ago.
Do they mix it up? I'm trying to remember. I'm normally pretty amped up from the anvil and getting the nachos and
yeah, I know it's probably something I should pay more attention to, but he wasn't yesterday, and people tweet at me like, "Oh, he usually is." I thought Taylor was announced last for that New England game, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just, but boy, you hear Hilton's answers. He's like, "I'll do whatever Jack Doyle does." I'm like, okay.
Oh wow,
that's quite the you're basing your decision off of totally somebody else. Doyle has another year on his contract for what it's worth, but.
And again, like you said, he can retire. He was potentially going to this year anyway.
I mean, Chris, when you talk about, like, where a player was drafted, it's one of the greatest careers in Colts history.
Yeah.
I mean, into the 3rd round, so many people question him about the competition and the durability and all of that and what he was able to do for a decade. I mean, Mathis is atop that list in terms of where you were drafted. But you factor that in, playing for so many different quarterbacks, and obviously hasn't been the same player here as of late, but, oh, yeah, I mean, you will never hear me say a bad word about Hilton and the career he had.
Last one comes from Bailey. Going into the season, how would you feel about going 4-1 against at Buffalo, New England, at Arizona, home against Tampa Bay?
Great. I mean, beyond great. I mean, that's, we haven't mentioned, can you beat good teams? Like, that storyline has ended to a degree. Obviously, the quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, 3 of those 4. Even I think Mac Jones is a pretty good quarterback. I think the biggest key right now, it's been really impressive to me, Chris, as you sit here and look at the standings. 2 things. First off, Baltimore losing yesterday was so massive. I don't know if people understood the magnitude of that game in terms of the standings and whatnot. That was just monumental. I think they had a lead late. Didn't Odell Beckham catch a 4th down or something against the Rams?
Yeah.
Or for the Rams?
Yep.
So, the other thing that has the Colts in this great position, they swept the AFC East. And really, they beat all those teams by double digits, too. But like Miami, think about it, if Miami would have won that game. Now all of a sudden, they're still in the mix, and they've got the tiebreaker over you. The Buffalo game. Buffalo and New England are both in the dance. One of them will be a wild card. One of them will win the East.
Correct.
That other wild card team, they could drop in the pecking order if they're head-to-head with the Colts. So the Colts have had an easier or a harder schedule this year. It hasn't been daunting. But the fact that they closed out the year in the fashion that they did with those wins. How many times do we say it? Can they go 5-2 to close out the year? You're 4-2. Here you are. It's about as much on a platter for you as you could hope for.
Right.
You win, you get in, and as we always say, man, and you'll hear me say this a week from Monday if we do the podcast, there is no better feeling as a fan in sports when your team has a chance. And once you get in, the beauty of the NFL, much more so than other professional sports leagues, and hell, certainly in college football right now, when your team gets in it, crazy SHIT can happen.
Yeah.
So that is the beauty of it.
All right, that's all we have for Twitter questions.
Okay, let's stick with Monday. Again, I know depending on the wild card schedule, the Colts could play on a variety of days next week, assuming they do. Will I regret having to do Rosie Bo's diapers for all of 2022?
No, because I was thinking about it. You probably will luck out because I would imagine she would be close to potty training time around then, so you wouldn't technically have diapers for a certain amount of time.
She did pee on the floor of the condo in Florida at one point. She has peed on our floor a couple times.
So I guess more cleanup duty.
I'm going to go out on a limb, Chris. I think Rosie Bo will be in diapers throughout 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, I should probably. No, I was going to say check the schedule. Check the schedule, Yes. Nothing says I'm more of a routine human being than that.
You gotta
right?
win. You got to.
Right?
Trevor Lawrence threw the league-leading interception yesterday. No real coach. Team's in turmoil. They're just trying to get out of the year.
Seriously. We'll see.
Thoughts on Big Ben's last game tonight? Potential. It is going to be his last game, right?
That dude. He's carrying his own bag up the 18th hole. You Colts need the Browns. Pittsburgh wins 2. If you were to lose, if Pittsburgh wins their last 2, they could factor into this as whatever. Ben, fine career. I respect the hell out of his toughness. I love the Mac feel. I don't necessarily respect everything about him. We don't need to go down that path. But, I enjoy watching the Steelers play football. I know it's not the prettiest, but I like a good slobber knocker here or there. And Browns officially eliminated. So, 5 for 2 left in the AFC. 2 for 1, 49ers and Saints in the NFC for that final spot. He is Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody, hope that you had a great time with the family over the past week or so. Sorry about no pod last week. That was all on me for traveling a little bit. But we'll continue Kevin's Corner throughout the offseason, throughout the rest of this season as well. And we'll see where it takes us moving forward. Everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you next Monday on Kevin's Corner. This has been Kevin Bowen. Thank you for listening to another edition of Kevin's Corner. If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher for the best Colts and Pacers coverage.